Hi guys, and welcome back to part 2 of the Ballet vocabulary, how to pronounce and what it offers the French learner in terms of vocabulary. So we're starting at D. I have one of my hairs in my mouth, that's lovely. Lovely. So we're going to start with Demi. So this is often said in English as demi. Yeah, like demi-plié, demi-point, we'd say. So demi-plié being, we'll get to P when we get to plié, we'll get to plié when we got to P. But when we're bending our legs and then we're sort of half bending the legs as opposed to fully bending them for the grand plié. And demi-point is when you go onto not the tips of your toes, non-dancers, as you guys will associate with ballet, but basically the flatter part of your foot that doesn't involve going onto the tip of your toe. So where the joint is of your big toe and across, that is your demi-point. So we will in English tend to say demi, okay? D-E in French is de. So there's a lot of sounds in French vocabulary generally that the English person will say is because our preferred way of saying E is like energy. So we tend to sit an E somewhere in the middle in English. So energy, cinéma, secretary. And French requires you to make a choice of up here or down here, as we've said. So demi, regarde, retirer, retirer, as opposed to réveiller. So you've got this cinéma, énergie. So your E in French is generally going higher or lower than it needs to go in English. So there's plenty of sounds in French which are de, but this one is de, demi. Now demi is an adjective meaning half, so it will generally precede another. It will precede a noun. It will go before a noun. So a half bottle, une demi-bouteille. So people that learn French often go, well, why aren't we saying la moitié, which is the proper word for a half, like I drank half of the bottle. Lightweight. So, alors moi j'ai bu la moitié de la bouteille. That is half in quantity of something. But if you pre-ordered a half bottle, that would be une demi-bouteille. So subtle difference there. So demi has an E added to it depending on what it is half of. So you might have noticed this phrase, demi, when you say what the time is. Like half past something, et demi, 3h30, okay? And the demi there is going to be spelt with an E because it is feminine for hour. And if you are talking about a half masculine thing, it will be demi, D-E-M-I, okay? Demi-pointe, guys, so demi-pointe is obviously your half of your foot on, effectively, half of the point. Demi-plié, okay? So yeah, demi. All right, lovely. Next word. So don't say demi, say demi. Okay? Détourné. So there's an example, a détourné. Okay, so you are unturning. So D-E acute in French is generally a prefix. That's a little sound that we stick on the beginning of another word, which kind of makes it like dis, the opposite. Yeah, so when we have a de acute before a word that we know, it basically undoes it. So for example, if I said to do, faire, so I'm gonna pack my suitcases. Alors moi je vais faire mes valises. I'm going to undo, disdo, for want of a better word, unpack my suitcases, défaire. To please, plaire, to displease, déplaire. To, like débrouiller, all these expressions that you are unbolting, disfogging, getting through the fog, understanding. Couvrir, to cover, découvrir. So that is very, very important. So when you have your détourné business going on, you are kind of turning. You are turning away from the turn, which sounds really odd. So this in French can very commonly be used as to kind of divert something, to turn away from something. So détourner is often people say like it tends to be turning towards your back foot rather than where you were kind of going previously, for want of a better example. So détourné. If we look what else comes up, détourné, divert, reroute, our American friends, to hijack or divert something. So if you were going to like, you know, take it away from where it was previously going. Any other figurative uses? Because it's pretty darn literal. Money, embezzle. You can détourne funds. You can take funds away from where they were meant to be going and pop them in your own pocket. Who would do such a shocking thing? So yeah, so really common expression. Again, what did I tell you advanced French learners to do? Look how you'd use it with reflexive. Se détourner. This is a physically turning the body away from something, you know, to look away. You know, I turned my back on somebody because I didn't want them to see my face, okay? To physically turn round, French learners, is faire demi-tour, to do half turn. Notice demi-tour, because half of a turn. More on tour later. So yeah, so tourner to turn, détourner to unturn. Disturn, on this occasion, turn to the back in ballet. Well, we'll turn away, to basically change your direction. Lovely. Next D word. What have we got? We've got, God, there's an absolute plethora. Dégagé. Dégagé. Any of these words for when you basically move your foot at bar get quite bothersome for beginners, because there tends to be lots of ways to talk about these, and some of these are to do with how far off the ground you're moving your foot, and some of these are to do with how, whether you're basically working with an American or whether you're not. Some of these are to do with the manner and the style in which you move your foot. So you will come across, if you dip your toe, no pun intended, into ballet, you will come into, you know, these jetés, these tendus, these dégagés, these kind of words. Okay, your dégagé, okay, basically means disengage. That's what dégagé means. Okay, so you are freeing your foot, for want of a better word, from where it is, in a straight manner. Okay, in any of those sort of directions, okay? So it's not a position, it's a movement, all right? Dégagé, great, popular French, okay? So again, notice we've got the de quality to it, so you're undoing something. So to remove, to clear, to unblock, to decongest, yeah? You know, to decongest the bronchioles, you know, dégager les branches, you know, I managed to get my foot out of the trap. Rather niche example. Alors j'ai réussi à dégager mon pied du piège. You know, they got the victims out of the wreckage. Alors les pompiers, ils ont dégagé les victimes. So this idea of removing somebody from something, getting them out of something, and that's what your foot is doing. Even though it's connected to you, it's kind of like escaping, it's kind of moving forward. Good. Lovely. So that's dégagé. Lovely. Devant. We've spoken about devant. D-E-V-A-N-T. So devant in French means in front of. Devant. Yeah, I've heard devant by some really respected American ballet YouTubers. There's no such thing as devant. 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 So once again, we've got an E. There's no accent on it, E acute. There's no grave on it. There's no moe or, you know, any other kind of accent. So basically, on the assumption there that unless it's E-R-E-S-E-T or E-Z, most of the time it's going to go to the chest. So devant, chest, devant. In front. Yeah, so like I said earlier, the difference between devant en avant and derrière en arrière is that it's the position of where your leg is, generally, in relation to your body, as opposed to the movement your body is going on. So devant would be would be your leg in front of you. En avant would be moving forward. Derrière would be your leg behind you. En arrière would be something moving backwards. Generally, all right? Good. So then consequently we've got behind, so derrière. Now this is a harmless joke in English, but we obviously say derrière. Move your derrière, because your derrière means behind. okay? Shake your derrière like you just don't care. So derrière, we've got two R's. You might choose the derrière, you might choose to keep it a soft R, derrière, but it's de, yeah? You might go, why isn't it derrière? Because there's no, it's because the ER, like I said, ER, ES, ET, EZ often go higher, so it's derrière, all right? And you're pronouncing the R there, derrière, because it's not an adjective, it's not like au premier, première, it will always be derrière. There's no like masculine version of this, because it's not an adjective, okay? It's a preposition behind a noun, all right? So derrière, lovely. Derrière, devant, now, one of my favourite ones that I hear all the time. There is a brand of tyre called Dunlop, okay? Outside Birmingham, I think it's now a shopping centre. I'm trying to think of driving in. There is a place called Fort Dunlop. Dunlop tyres are basically how most English-speaking ballet teachers say develop your leg. Okay, this is because, okay, we prefer to go yeah, makes it sound like a Teletubby. So secretary, yeah, develop. Okay. No, sorry, I apologise. In English, develop, développé, de, at speed, they've kind of picked up the subtlety of the French. So they say devil pay. I've even heard devil pay. Like, who are you paying and why are you paying the devil? Devil pay, or developpé is yeah. Developpé your leg. Yeah. In French, if you look at the word, okay, let's see if we get a rather gorgeous, yeah, so if you were to bring it up on any website, okay, the accent is really written everywhere. I can't find a version on the internet where people haven't bothered to write the accent, even in ballet. So as we've said, D-E acute is de. So then the next E is flatter. So you've got dev. And this will go faster, develop. So it's develop rather than develop. Develop. So if you wanted to join it, it'd be develop rather than develop rather than develop. Yeah, okay? So develop. You can obviously use it as a verb, développer. Yeah. So as a verb, what does it mean? To develop, to cultivate, to further, to grow. Yeah. Something can develop if you don't say what is being developed. You need to make it reflexive. So that's to develop. That's developing. All right. So the main issue here isn't the use of it in French, although I'd ask learners to make sure that you can handle the reflexive. It's more the ballet people of the world stop saying develop. Yeah, it's develop. I've got the ballet one so in my head in English. Good. Next word I think is dedans. On the list, they're not in alphabetical order. I've just gotten them all collated. So dedans, lovely. Dedans. So the main time ballet dancers will come across dedans, although it doesn't have to be a pirouette movement. It's basically something where you are headed. So for want of a better word in terms of towards working leg, if your right leg were in a retiré effacé and you were pirouetting with your inside thigh turning towards that way, that would be en dedans, as people would say in English. And if it were going with your outside knee heading backwards, that would be en dehors, or en dehors, as people say, rather than dehors, which is what we say in French. So that's generally a turning position, like a movement of where you're going, all right? There's a lot of D words in ballet that you come across as a learner. Devant, derrière, dessus, dessous, dedans, dehors, okay? Or en dehors, as people say. So dedans, in French, dedans, is when you say in, but you don't say in what. So I went for coffee yesterday and I put my laptop in my bag. Alors moi, j'ai mis mon ordi dans mon sac. Where have you put your laptop, Luke? I put it inside. Alors, je l'ai mis dedans. Je l'ai mis dedans. So, dedans is in when you no longer say in what. It's implicit. We know what it is. Where have you put it? Inside. Dedans. Can you just look inside? Where's Luke? He's inside. Il est dedans. Not normally, given the chance Luke's walking around outside in nature. Yeah. So, dedans is in when you're not saying what the noun is. All right? It's also, for you advanced learners, something you might want to try and start managing with là-dedans, so there within. Yeah, so like I left it inside, alors je l'ai laissé là-dedans. We'll add a little dedans in it. Inside, interior, within. Figuratively, what have I said, guys? Internally, inside, dedans. Yeah, you know, inside of myself. Within yourself. Anything else particularly useful? He wound up in it, as in an industry. Yeah, in it, again. Yeah, il est tombé dedans. In there, là-dedans, there within. Okay? Very, 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 very common. Okay? Good. So the next one then, and consequently the opposite to dedans, would be dehors. Okay? Now this is confusing. So non-ballet people again then, so this would be if you were turning sort of with one way, the action of the body going another way. So dehors can be on its own with an O before it, or an en before it. So this would be an outside, okay? You can also figuratively have hors, so hors de service, out of service, out of price, priceless, hors de prix. Lovely film with Audrey Tautou and, oh God, what's his name? The one that was with Charlotte of Monaco's daughter. Lovely film. Two grifters in the south of France try and scam each other. Lovely, lovely film. Hors de prix, priceless. Hors pair. Luke is a French teacher without equal. So you've got this kind of like hors outside of kind of, you know, without quality as well. So go and have a look at hors, H-O-R-S. Hors d'oeuvre, the hors d'oeuvres, because it's outside of the main work. Yeah? But dehors is either going to present itself for you with being outside. So where is he? He's outside. Yeah, literally just in terms of outside in life, as opposed to inside a building. So it's a nice day and the children are playing outside. Ouais, il fait beau et les enfants jouent dehors. Yeah, okay. It's outside, so referring to the external facade of a building. Okay. Alors l'intérieur de cette maison est plus beau que son dehors. Like, so the inside of this house is more beautiful than the outside. All right. Aspect. Someone, it can be plural. C'est dehors. Yeah, his external, whatever, how he comes across. Okay. Yeah, like a cold, somebody seems cold, and dehors froid. You know, we've got all of these kind of things. When you then want to use it as an adverb, in relation to the verb, or then a preposition before another noun, this is when you start saying au dehors and en dehors de. So en dehors is à l'extérieur de quelque chose in a synonymous way. So that's probably what you're going to use. Au dehors is more outwardly. Yeah. From the view from outside, rather than this thing is on the outside of something else. So au dehors de or en dehors. Yeah. En dehors is very much an English pronunciation. All right. Good. Let's then go to, shall we just attack and get these D's out the way? Dessus and dessous. Shall we just have a look at dessus and dessous? We might as freaking well. Yeah, it's the next on the list. So one of the signs that vowels in French are so hardcore useful And one of the times that even despite, growing up with the language, that I just remember thinking, oh my God, this language is so on vowels, is when I was 18, I was at college, I was in Paris, and we were doing a glissade movement, which we'll talk about later when we get to G. And people were talking about like over, under the foot, under. And if you think we were doing a maypole, which, and again, dates me, but if you think people were going around in a rhythm, skipping rounds, with ribbons, round a pole. And I remember as a kid doing that in England and it being like over, under, over, under. How different are those words? To the French mindset, saying dessus, dessous, dessus, dessous, really does feel quite different. U and oo are completely different vowels. But if you think that dessous and dessous to an English brain, they sound freaking identical. So you've got to focus again on where this vibration is coming from. Dessus or dessous. So this you'll hear when you later come across which is what's known as susu, which is not. It's either susu or susu, which is a foot placement movement with one in front, yada, yada, yada. So ballet people, when you are talking about the in front or the placement of the foot and all of this business, dessous, if it ends sus, dessous. The other direction it landing behind, dessous, the movement of where it's going to end up. Your assemblées and all of this business, dessus, dessous. Make sure you are hearing the oo. Yeah? Make sure you are hearing the u and the oo. Dessus, dessous. That is impressive as a Brit or an American if you are saying that correctly. French learners, let's have a very quick conversation. You don't need, so if you think about it, sur is on. So you, on top. So just think you is higher in the body than OU, which we've already said is oo. So your U is over, on top, forward moving, whatever. Oo is dessous, under. Like the sewers are underneath cities, all right? So you could say, where is it on the table? So on my head, sur ma tête. Under my chin, whatever, sous, whatever, le menton, mâchoire, jaw. On top of, which again kind of can be this in English, but could also kind of be like floating above, au-dessus de. So we've got au, au-dessus de. We can have underneath as opposed to under as en dessous, as au-dessous de, where we keep the o in both. Why have you gone on London? Both of them. But it's just more common to hear au-dessus, en dessous. All right? In language. Likewise, like Dedans and Dehors, and Devant and all this crap, we don't even need to say what we're saying it about. So if I said, where have you stuck the car keys, Luke? I'm very good, I don't lose car keys. I don't generally lose keys. Like, I have a studio visitor pass from, where was this? 3 Mills, that I use keep keys with. I don't like losing keys. So, but if I were like on the table, sur la table, and somebody went, where did you put them? Yeah, so my friend Chris says, Luke, I'll go and reverse the car out for you. Or drive at the speed of Marty McFly in Back to the Future, is more what he'd do. I'll go and reverse the car out for you. So, where are the keys? Oh, just on top. Right, au-dessus. We don't need to say au-dessus de whatever it is, because it's implied. Underneath, en dessous. And again, on top, dessous, dessous. We can say them on their own. So in other words, learners of French, coming from a ballet perspective, or ballet, looking at the French, dessous is part of a greater family of prepositions that go before nouns. All right, good. Lovely, lovely, lovely. We've done Devant, we've done Développé. Lovely, 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 lovely. Divertissement, not really. It's a divertissement is within a ballet. So a lot of the time, the narrative of ballet weirds people out. If you kind of have a central story, and they'll be like, there's often a reason within the central story, particularly if you've got anything courtly or a presentation of a young woman on her 16th birthday before she gets her finger pricked. If there's any sort of courtly scene, or you've got a sort of Giselle thing going on in the forest, or there's a reason for somebody to celebrate, it's all peasants and royalty in ballet. For a long time, it's the lowest of the low, temple girls, slaves, whatever, highest of the high, princesses, whatever, the same ballet, whatever. Okay, it's all very status based. So if within these court scenes you've got like little people presenting and dancing, or you've got a little bit of fantasy, sort of like within your nutcracker, you've got little things, little fun, amusing little episodes within a ballet is a divertissement. All right, divertissement. Okay, we've got this word, okay, divertir, which is to, again, from divert, but it's more divert as in amuse, entertain. Okay, divertissant is kind of entertaining. Okay, in Spanish, divertirse is the same verb, and diversion, so diversion in English obviously means go another way, yeah. But in Spanish, if you've got diversion and you've got the tilde accent over the O, it means fun. So in London, it's very common to see a yellow road sign with diversion, and somebody Hispanic, somebody Spanish, somebody whatever, will have taken a bit of black paint and popped the accent on, which means fun this way. So diversion becomes fun this way, which I think is quite funny. Good, so divertissement, you're talking about fun. It's amusing, it's ha 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 ha. It's not always everybody's favourite bits, sometimes people like them. So yeah, but to be honest with you, more commonly the verb to enjoy yourself would be s'amuser, je m'amuse, that amuses me, ça m'amuse, ça m'amuse. I enjoy doing something, alors je me plais, whatever, ça me plaît, rather than I'm thinking Spanish, divertir. Yeah, good. Next one. Lovely. Let's move on to E. This is a labour of love, isn't it? I'm really gonna be glad when I finish this. But I don't mean I'm not enjoying it, but I mean as in there's a lot to talk about. Good. Emboîté. So emboîté. I can't really think I've ever heard this mispronounced in English. Okay. Boîte, like a twat. Boîte, emboîté, so emboîté. Okay. So a boîte is a box. Yeah, a boîte. What else could it be? Boîte could be like a slang word for a company, a nightclub, boîte de nuit. To boiter, is to limp. Okay. But it's a box. Okay. So emboîté is this boxing together. So this sort of interlocking, this stacking. Okay. There's a really important thing. You will get emboîtement, which is how they've been, the action of putting them together, and emboîtage, which is also the kind of physical packaging rather than the placement of where they've been put. So that's a bit niche if you really want to look at it. But emboîter as a verb, fit, slot, interlock, all of this business, all right? In terms of construction. So emboîter as a ballet movement will often be like a series of direction changes, turns. You've got this land one side, land one side, land one side, land one side, nice and bouncy. It's all just sticking together. So it's like you land one way, you turn the shoulder, you keep turning, you keep turning, you keep turning. So it's kind of like a series of interconnected landing little jumps. Half turn, half turn, half turn, half turn. Okay. Good. Guys, check the reflexive. Ça s'emboîte. It's slotting together, fitting together. Lovely. All right. So emboîté dancers. Écarté. Écarté. Notice there is a fat E acute at the beginning, and notice there is a fat E acute at the end. Écarté. Écarté. So écarté is not a movement, it is a shape. No, it's a body position. What do I mean by shape? So if you were facing diagonally left, for example, and your leg were going out to what we would say to second, so your leg, let's say, would be a perfect 90 degrees to your right, that would mean that your other leg would be going diagonally to the right. Or if you were facing diagonally to the right, yeah, There's numbers for these positions, and it depends whether you're using general or Russian numbering of like what number position you're in ballet. But there's, let's say you're facing to the right diagonal, and your right leg turned out to 90 degrees would therefore be facing your back right diagonal. That, together with an arm and a head and certain, up and down positions, is écarté. So it's a second, but it's to do with where your body's facing, all right? That is all very lovely, okay? And it has a lovely sort of suspended feel to it, and all of this business. It's very, very nice. And if you think that your body's generally, and unless you're doing like a penché, your body's generally, or maybe like a renversé, your body's generally kind of locked in ballet compared to jazz and isolations and hip rolls and all of this stuff. So the facing of your body, the shoulder angle, is kind of freaking busy. Where your body is. And if you think that so much of it is what your legs are doing, you want to kind of show off your legs to the best, don't you? And you want to kind of show off what your angle is and what story you're telling, and you're turning to face one way. And, so this angling is really important in ballet. So écarté is a position, is a movement in a certain direction relating to the facing of your body. So écarté in French is so super busy. Oh my gosh, for dancers, it's still completely commonly used in French. So it is the idea of moving something to one side, or taking away, or again diverting, or spreading, parting, opening. It's a this feeling. It's a this feeling. So you can écarte something from something else. Two things can be écartés. You can écarté cards. You can pop cards to one side. It's this moving a part of something, okay? S'étendre, which is another verb, is to spread. So if I dropped oil on water, that's spreading. Écarté is the idea of the one thing going away from something else, or the two things going away from each other. The splits, one leg in front, one leg behind, or a cut split, lovely name, or a side split. How's this for niche vocabulary? You can tell I trained in Paris. A cut split, a side split, is known as a grand écart facial. So a facial split. So écarté is the idea of something coming away from something. So le grand écart, the big divide, the big split. Yeah, that's the splits, all right? So how could you guys get écarté into your vocabulary if you are speakers? Possibly instead of séparé. So there's two naughty boys being naughty together. On va les écarter, we're going to separate them. Open your legs. Time and a place. Écarte les jambes. I mean, not even in ballet. Just open your legs, This road will take you away from the main town, but it's faster. Alors, cette route, vous écoute de cette... Luke, put your specs on. Cette route vous écarte de cette ville, mais elle est plus rapide. So this road takes you away from this town, but it's faster. All right? So really, really, really common verb. All right? Again, figurative advanced people. We can't rule out, we can't put to one side, we can't eliminate this hypothesis, this possibility. Is Luke mad? We can't rule it out. On peut pas l'écarter. Can't dismiss, we can't rule out. Good. Next up. Échappé, échappé, échappé. E acute, échappé. So this, for want of a better explanation, with all the beautiful, interesting things we can do to it, we can beat it, we can turn it, we can land differently, we can open into, So you are basically opening your legs and landing in this open position. So mainly second, or a fourth. So you would start in a closed position, jump to a second, that's a leg wide open, or a fourth position, one leg further in front. So it's this opening of the legs are escaping one another, all right? To escape, échapper. Where we get escape from in French, in English, it's still there, échapper, échapper. Double P. So to escape, somebody, notice learners, there's a cheeky little ah, yeah? So the prisoner managed to escape whatever from somebody, échappé à. So that bothers a lot of you because you're like, why is it escape to? But it's that escape movement, the escaping has been done to the person that's been fled from, if that makes sense. So échapper à quelque chose. Yeah? You know, so he escaped his prison. Il a échappé à son prison. But you can use it with de. So échapper à, like elude, being elegant, avoid, dodge, outrun, get away from. You can't escape your destiny. Il est impossible d'échapper à son destin. So that is an avoid escape. Because it's échapper à, it's indirect. So French dancers, this won't mean a thing to you, but grammar people, French, because it's à, it's indirect. So for example, that escaped him. Ça lui a échappé. You'd use the indirect pronoun, all right? Escape someone, again, échapper à quelqu'un, échapper à quelque chose. S'échapper is to get out of something you were previously in. Okay? So whilst there are a few crossovers of to escape and escape, it's kind of like avoiding the prison as opposed to having previously been in the prison and getting out of it. So s'échapper, and that will be s'échapper. Yeah? S'échapper de. Yes, so you escape yourself from the prison. So échapper à, s'échapper de. Échapper à, s'échapper de. All right? Good. Lovely. Effacé. So if we go back to our positions, and we've talked about the croisé, which is where your working leg is facing, basically. You can do things to the front in ballet, like, you know, en face. Of course you can. But or just face. But things look nicer ever so slightly in profile. Okay? And we're not an ABBA video, so we don't want like we don't always want to be totally in profile. So this diagonal's a very nice thing. Very freaking commonly, once you've done your bar, once you've done your adage, once you've done various tendus and bits and pieces, class will then go on to, you know, particularly if you're doing grand allegro, you've done your petit allegro, petit allegro will often stay facing forward. It doesn't have to, it can work on the diagonals. But if you then go into grand allegro, it's often that it will be from the corner, as we'd say in jazz. You know, because it's just a way to show your movement, but also have somebody coming downstage, whatever. So effacé is one of these diagonally interesting kind of things. It's about the working leg isn't crossing in front of the supporting leg, it's the other leg. So for want of a better term, it's an opposite of croisé in a weird way. So don't worry about that too much if you are the French learner. Just know that it is a leg position regards to where the leg is. But people always mistranslate this and they go, oh, it comes from shaded. I don't know what effacé comes from shaded. I don't know where the hell this comes from. The word for shade is à l'ombre. So effacé is to basically erase, rub it out, you know, wipe away, wipe off. So I suppose the idea being that the other leg, the supporting leg, has kind of been made redundant and not as important because, no, your working leg has been made, I don't want to say made unimportant, but it's kind of like all of that leg, some of it is not erased, but it's kind of behind your other leg kind of thing. And there's that element of now it might just be that when French deposited this terminology on the body movements, that French was used in a slightly different way than it is today. But effacé currently would be erase, wipe away, wipe off, clean. You know, I'm going to wipe, you know, wipe off something, remove from a door, like graffiti, you know, je vais l'effacer. Wipe a board, effacer. Like a supprimer, delete, French learners. Yeah, delete. So on a computer, the window is asking me if I want to delete the file. Je suis à la fenêtre, me demande si je veux effacer ou supprimer, like I said, le fichier. Yeah? S'effacer, s'efface. So with time, you know, photos fade, s'efface. I'm fairly sure, and this is really niche, but dancers would kind of know this. if they are musical comedy dancers. I think s'efface, I've got s'efface as a double accroche. I think s'efface is in Mon Histoire, which is On My Own in Les Mis in French. Let's have a little look. If I'm right, I'm such a freaking geek. I think it is. Oh no, it's ne se défasse, so don't get undone, rather than efface. All right, never mind. God, Luke, you are an odd person. Lovely, so that's your effacé. Yeah, so delete, remove, fade, whatever. All right, good. Next one, entrechat. Entrechat. This is when you see, and it's a very commonly mocked or copied thing if somebody's imitating ballet, when you would jump up with the legs and land. Yeah, entrechat. Okay, so there is a numerical system for this, non-dancers, that you might find interesting. So it always bothers people. So if, for example, I had one leg in front and I did, so this changement that we're talking about, if I cross, so you've got entrechat 4, entrechat 6, commonly referred to chat 4. Yeah, chat 4, chat 3. So a chat 3, so an even one, would be 2 legs doing the same thing. An odd one would be, so for example, landing in front, landing behind, leg in front, on the coup de pied, landing in front, for example. So chat 3 would be like cross where you were kind of one leg landing up, for example, instead of both feet landing on the floor. But it's this jumping movement, and there's a whole system to it. Lovely. There's another word later on, which is royal, which is royal, which is when instead of kind of jumping to change, we change where we were, we beat where we were, and then change, and that's called a royal. But entrechat, literally in French, between cat, has absolutely sweet FA to do with French. It has nothing. And because you've got pas de chat, like step of the cat, which there's 2 pas de chat, there's like petit, grand, but you know, one is your little jumping up and down movement to the side, and one is sometimes what other people would say is a grand jeté. They would call that a pas de chat, a grand pas de chat. But basically, it's got nothing to do with chat and pas de chat. It is a corruption of the. So if I was to plait hair in French, that would be a tresse. And my Italian's good. I don't think I'd use the word plaiting my hair very often though. But Entrechat is to like interplait, into tresses. So it's a plaited, a woven, an interlaced step. That's what it means. So where your legs go, blah, 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 blah. It's basically, how do they go, Luke? Blah, blah, blah. It's basically, I can't tell you how hard this is for me at the moment. It's something I used to read, for all I'm tall, and I always think shorter legged guys are such great jumpers. And I always think taller legged guys have great kicks and extension, I always think. But for all I have long legs, I used to be quite a good little jumper. I used to enjoy jumping. And now it's like I've got leg weights. It's just, the whole thing's awful. Anyway, the law is going after the individual responsible, and we'll see what happens. So this is not anything that you need to take into your French. Yeah, it's just a specific word. The only time that you would use this would be if you were sort of referring to, this in a ballet context, in a kind of like, oh, he was off doing his jumps or his ballet stuff. It's just not something you'd ever use in French. Okay. To interlace in French exists. It's the verb entrelacer. Entre being between, and lacer being this kind of like whoosh. Okay. So entrelacer is basically what entrechat means in Italian, but the French verb. And entrelacer, or as some people call it, depending what method you've done, like tour jeté and all this business, is this lovely thing where one leg goes up one way, you turn one leg the other way, you more, the whoop, across, turning across the, the stage movement. That's a really crappy description. Yeah, but it's basically one leg kind of battements one way, you kind of turn back, then becomes the battement. You could be clever if you wanted and add a kind of split in the middle a little bit more. When you're young and not affected by illness, you might do it and then reverse the split and then land. Otherwise, you might just be happy to land and not break. But this movement, this whoop, leg swap, whoop, whoop, is an entrelacé because it's interlaced. Okay, so entrelacé is to intertwine, to interlace. Entrelacé. S'entrelacer is to hug each other. So be very careful. There's a lot of kissing and hugging in French. It always bothers people how much we kiss. So two straight guys who are pals would quite happily, no problem. It wouldn't bother people. But one of the verbs to kiss with the mouth is embrasser, s'embrasser. And there's a whole area of concern because bisou meaning a kiss, and baiser meaning a kiss, but baiser as a verb meaning to F-U-C-K in a vulgar way. And that's weird because there's nothing in English where the word doesn't sound rude unless you say it in a certain way. Nobody would be like, pardon me saying it, but I need to for academic purposes. Nobody would be comfortable sort of saying, yes, would you like a fuck cake? But then somebody's saying, oh, they're going to go and fuck. That's rude. Like there's nothing where the word would kind of become less terrible if you said it in a certain context. We're all now wondering what a fuck cake is. In my case, as a celiac, any cake is a fuck cake unless it's gluten-free. So basically, s'entrelacer is like the hugging version of s'embrasser. S'embrasser being, although it sounds like embrace, that's to kiss. All right? So lovely. Good. Next one. We earlier had, développé. Okay, we've now got enveloppé, which is basically to envelop. All right, so this, if you think in terms of movement, it's kind of the opposite. Okay, so if you've got a leg, for want of a better term, I could probably do this standing up. If you've got a leg and the leg is folding up and then opening, or folding forward and then opening, for want of a better description, this is developing, okay? If your leg came up straight, it wouldn't be developing in ballet. It would be like a relevé lent. There's me saying it the shitty French, the English way. Or a battement if it was faster. You could even have a battement, which is like a big beat, but on a développé, you could have that with a kind of unfolding battement, okay, which is very, very attractive. Particularly French learners, you see, you catching it all up now. We might have that on a écarté. We might have that with the angle to the side. We then have the unfolding leg going all the way up. But enveloppé is basically to envelop, to surround. It's also a little bit sarcastically, again, ballet dancers, be careful, somebody who's a bit chubby, a bit porky, a bit on the bigger side, because they're well enveloped, they're well whatever. So shrouded, blanketed, again, something could be enveloped in mystery or suspense, okay? So that is the opposite, okay? Lovely. Emballé is another word as well, like wrapped, so emballed. Yeah, do you remember ballonné, guys? So emballé, yeah, so that would do the same thing, guys, in the French. Entouré, surrounded by, somebody's love, you could be surrounded by, enveloppé, Good. Envelop is a word in English, but probably not as much as it, envelope, obviously, is where we get this from in English. Good, next one. Épaulement, lovely word. So épaulement is these are your shoulders. I saw a physio the other day who literally said, do you know that your right shoulder is permanent? Like if as you stand, your right leg is shorter than your left, to the point that as you sit, you're normal, but when you stand, you're ever so slightly like this because your right leg is ever so slightly shorter. And I'm like, good God, no. And as I put my foot flat, and if I stand on my left, I can swing my right foot with zero resistance. Isn't that freaking frightening? And if I stand on my right foot, my sole of my left foot ever so gently rubs on the floor. Yeah, who knew? Who knew? I mean, I know bodies are asymmetrical. People have different boobs and hold things different way, and they have a stronger arm and all this business. But yeah, that was kind of frightening. Lovely. So épaulement is basically what you're doing with your shoulders in ballet. It's you know, the placement of your shoulders. You might be asked to bring in a little bit more épaulement to kind of like, you know, give it that feeling that you want. It's basically the movement of your shoulders, all right? In arabesques and things, you know, often people do it when they're not meant to do it. So for example, you know, often you'll be told in ballet, you know, don't go weak on the opposite shoulder. Keep the opposite shoulder forward while you're doing something. Don't cheat and go weak. But often it looks lovely and you've got this sort of like leaning quality. But in French, I'm sorry to tell you, it's just not a big word. Épaule is obviously shoulders. Épaule. You know, épaulement would just literally be, it's either something within like castles or military or something like this, where there's kind of like a last little bit of like a lip, a fold, a sort of mini wall before the main thing. That's an épaulement. So really freaking niche. Go and look it up. I can't think, I'm not that clever. Or in military stuff, it's the action of popping something onto your shoulder. My grandpa taught me that. So yeah, but not like a big French word at all. All right. Good. Étoile. Étoile is star. Yeah? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Sansi, sansi, petite étoile. Étoile is a star. Within a ballet company, this shocks a lot of people who think that ballet is very artistic and, you know, whatever. There is a ranking, okay? There is a ranking. And when somebody progresses through kind of like corps, coryphée, whatever, soloist, featured soloist, whatever, you'll have heard of things like prima, although that's a little bit more like the Italian system, and prima ballerina, assoluta, and all this business. Étoile is basically your top bitch. So your star. And one of the lovely stories is before Nureyev for the Vaganova inspired of us, amongst us, Sylvie Guillaume is a lovely French ballet dancer who there's everybody else in life, and then there's Sylvie Guillaume. So for a long time within ballet in England, you were Team Darcy or Team Sylvie. So Darcy was kind of like tall for an English dancer again, but just like gentle princess, whatever. And Sylvie was your powerhouse. Mom had been a gymnastics teacher. Sylvie Guillaume, I mean, it's almost like boredom, just like leg to 12 o'clock out of boredom. Oh, are you ready for me kind of thing. And I think this is so cool. And even within England, she was known as Mademoiselle Non, because so what happened was this dancer who'd gone quite late to ballet. She'd been a gymnast. Her mom had been a gymnast. And I think she'd gone on an exchange program as a gymnast to Les Petits Rats, like the little rats. So to kind of the training school for, you know, l'Opéra Garnier, which is the big, beautiful opera in the centre of Paris. There's another one at Bastille, but this is the main one. And yeah, I think it just suited her. And they were like, yeah, you're amazing. But then to be fair, so was Darcy Bussell. I think she was at Arts Ed, which is a general sort of, you know, ballet, musical theatre, acting school in Chiswick in London. And although there's a younger school, Tring, I think. And yeah, she went as well. So, you know, and they were like, oh, by the way, you're kind of quite good. You're kind of quite good at the ballet thing. You might want to kind of do a bit more of the ballet thing. So, yeah, so Sylvie Guillaume was made, I think it was Cinderella she danced for him. I think by then he knew he was dying. I don't think he quite knew what of, but he knew he was dying. Watched the movie. And he made her star. And I think she jumped above other people. And then how did she thank him? She defected to London, where she thought, I'll get to choose what I want to do. I won't just be this token pretty little princess. And she's cool, she's badass, she's always been involved in kind of like, contemporary stuff. She's always been at Sadler's Wells rather than just, Sadler's Wells the theatre rather than Sadler's Wells the touring ballet company, which I think became ENB, English National Ballet. But the fact is, or did it become Birmingham Royal Ballet? I forget. But the fact is, this woman is just the badass powerhouse of ballet. She's amazing. And she is, for me, the permanent étoile. But étoile in French just means star. Yeah? So, hotel, however many stars, 3 étoiles, 4 étoiles, 5 étoiles. Anytime you'd use the word star in English, you'd use the word star in French. A star of cinema, étoile. We'll often say vedette du cinéma, but étoile. Étoile, étoile, étoile. Okay? Good. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Good. E, done. I think we're done with E. Okay, en. Preposition en. There's a lot of words in French which use en for ballet. So en avant, we've said moving forward. Less common, en couronne. So couronne meaning a crown. So like arms in the shape of a crown. Like a sort of odd fifth. En croix, very common. At the bar, if you're doing an exercise. This won't really show up in choreography very much, but like away from the bar, but like something forward. Well, other than exercises, like in the centre, I don't mean like in repertoire, I don't think I've particularly seen this. So a movement forward, a movement to the side, a movement back, a movement then off and to the side again. That's en croix. So as in a cross. Croix, croix. En dedans, we've talked about towards supporting leg. En dehors, en face, facing the audience, as opposed to your lovely croisé, effacé, écartés. En l'air, in the air. So notice the opposition of that ballet people. À terre versus en l'air. So on the ground versus en l'air. Okay. En l'air exists in French generally. Il a tout foutu en l'air. Pardon me, but I need to say this. He's fucked everything up. He's fucked everything up into the air. Ouais, il est tout foutu en l'air. En tournant, whilst turning. Yeah, so any movement, if we can do it in ballet, we can probably do it turning. Enchainnement, one word, we've already spoken about it. So your chaîné is your turns that move really quickly. Enchainnement has got nothing to do with that. It's a combination. You've chained some steps together. Entrechat, different, we've spoken about already. That's the little jump. Épaulement, good, good, good. Lovely. Let's keep going. I'm going to have a drink of water. Just give me 1 second. So, let's see if I can get to the end of FG and then we'll take a pause. I'm actually halfway through on my list. You wouldn't think so, would you? Because I'm only at E, but ballet seems to like the beginning of the alphabet. So, frappé. Nobody likes a frappé. Nobody. I don't like a frappé because it makes me think of tap and it makes me feel all tappy rather than ballet-y. But your frappé, from the French to strike, I know we've said that battre can be beat as well, but frappé, okay? It's pretty much a bar step at the bar, but it's kind of like a sudden movement. There's kind of Russian style, non-Russian style. There's times when you keep your foot in this coup de pied position and your foot will then, there's times when you will then have your flexed foot off the floor, off the floor, I can't do English, just above the ankle and then dart it out again, catching the floor. Yeah, there's this movement of this hitting the floor, okay? Brushing the floor suddenly, frappe. So there's that hitting movement. That hurts my fingers these days. God, I hate that doctor so damn much. Yeah, so where do we get that? What does that give us in French? Frappé. If you're going to pronounce it and you don't say frappé, it's you're spitting from a bridge. So frappé. Like a frappuccino, 10%. What have we got that we could use in French that's particularly shocking? I mean, nothing really, like something hit me, you know, figuratively, you know, se frapper, like as in, I was struck by, you know, the energy of this character. It says in the reference here, you know, le lecteur se frappe de, so he hits himself of the something else. So be very careful when you're doing an ABC verb. Dancers, have a little rest, have a stretch, dancers. French learners, you know how an ABC verb works. It's a reflexive verb with a, I always say it's a reflexive verb with a body part on the end of it, with an appendage. So it's like, I remember him. In English, I remember him. In French, I to myself remember of him. So se frapper de is kind of one of these. So I to myself am hit by of him, meaning like, or the character or the energy or the, you know, the quality of something, you know, se frapper de, all right? Frappant, you can have, you know, it's like striking, you know, absolutely, yeah. You know, what really struck me. So you can se frapper de a thing, or the thing can frappe you. Yeah. Lovely. Good. I think we've gotten to fouetter. Fouetter. God, I've got dry lips today. Why is that? Fouette. Not fouette, fouette, going via your OU. So fouetter, un coup de fouet, a lash, a whip, or a whisk in food, is well, it's generally two things that you'll come across. So fouetter turns, length forward, whip it round to the outside, and again, round, 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 or more Russian, side back, side back, or Italian, up, attitude, up, attitude. It's a type of term. And, or fouetter could be the action of, for example, your leg coming forward and you fouette your hip, so you're changing your body facing to give the feeling of that leg whipping round, but it's your leg is kind of staying where it is and your body suddenly faces. So there's whoosh, change midair, you know, or not so far off the ground if necessary, but change your facing, but with your leg still where it is. And that could go the other way as well. Yeah, you know, could be back leg. So back leg swished behind you, turn to face said leg. That would be a fouetter. So although both are generally referred to as fouetters, one is a fouetter turn and one is a fouetter, all right? And again, it's another one of these things where some English language dance teachers will use verbs of this stuff. So they will say, and you're going to fouette round to here, whereas others will say you're going to do a fouetter. So fouette, all right? Lovely. All right. Again, in beat, whisk, flog, lash. It's like a Friday night here, really. Yeah, nothing else there for you. Good. One of my favourite expressions in French, which is basically, you've always got some other stuff to do. I couldn't care less, I've got other stuff to do. J'ai d'autres chats à fouetter. Would I say j'ai d'autres chats à fouetter? I wouldn't do the liaison. J'ai d'autres chats à fouetter. I've got other cats to whip. Yeah? Which sounds weird, but I don't think it's the idea of I've got to go and whip a cat. I think it's the whipping the cat around. Now, God knows where that comes from, and you might want to look at the etymology, and somebody might want to write it underneath. But we do in English say, if a place is really small, you say you couldn't swing a cat. So I don't know, historically, before we had television, and apart from, you know, other activities to do, what did we do? We you know, cats went flying, all right? Good. Lovely. Great. Fondue, fondue in poo English pronunciation. Fondue. En U, a fondue. So you will have come across a fondue as in a fondue set, which is basically like melted cheese when you melt something and put the food in it, like a Swiss thing, or chocolate fondue. So fondue means melted. Fondue in ballet is basically referring to this melting, this sinking down kind of the supporting leg. So it's this when you say at the bar, let's do some fondues, it's this idea of at the same time supporting leg and working leg coming in, supporting leg and working leg going out at the same time. You know, that's kind of your main exercise, and that's quite beautiful. But something on a fondue is basically, you know, the supporting leg bend. If you think to not confuse in French the following verbs: to melt, fondre, fondu; fonder, so fondre, fondu, the verb fondre; confondre, which is to confuse two things, past tense, confondu. So people confuse me, well, not so much now, but when we were little, people confuse me and my brother. So, you know, confondre, the idea of confusing one thing for another. So people confuse balloter and ballonner from the word or something. Confondre. Fonder, to found and establish. So for example, maison fondée en, house established in. And all Brits that I teach always want to say maison fondue. The house didn't melt in 1782. It was established in 1782. And then there's verbs to confuse, as in that thing confuses me, which is the verb embrouiller, ça m'embrouille. So when it comes to anything F-O-N-D, be careful. Font as well as funds and all of this business, you know. There's an absolutely fabulous, amazing dancer, amazing teacher who is at Danceworks in London. There are several, I will talk about the rest at the end. You know, there's your lovely Phil. Who else would I massively recommend at the moment? There's lovely Hannah, who basically helped me get literally my quite disabled body even bending remotely again. Details at the end. There's the amazing Inga. Who else do I feel safe with at the moment? There's a lovely guy called, you know, Denzel, who's just always got energy in absolute spades. Really, you just can't talk about how, you know, positive that guy is. There's my lovely friend Chris, who, you know, that teaches Russian and more repertoire and pas de deux sort of coaching work and stuff. And this woman, Adela, Spanish, she's amazing. Is it Adela Ramirez? I always forget her surname. I'm very poo on people's surnames. She's Spanish, I mean, beautiful dancer. She says fondue. So there's something about her palate. There's something about her mouth. Adela Ramirez. And there's something about her mouth that likes saying fondue. She knows the vibration is here, but in her Spanish accent it becomes fondue. So she always says fondue, and I'm loving it. But she's cool, but she speaks in Spanish half the class as well, which I just think is amazing. You know, she'll be like, basta, that's enough, that'll do. We use basta in French, by the way. Like we do say basta, that's enough. Good, but the word is fondue, not fondue. All right, on we go. Let's get to the end of F. Fermé, we've spoken about before. Okay, closed. Okay, amongst other things, you know, how do your legs end at the end of a step? Are they open, front, behind, side? Are they closed? Fermé. Okay, so a 600 fermé, we'll get to 600. You know, are you landing leg behind, past the arabesque? Are you landing back, closing it again? What's going on? All right. Lovely. Lovely. Failli. Very obviously connected to the word fail. Failli, yi. Failli, 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 yi. All right. So it kind of means failed. Failli is still used. If a person is failli, they are bankrupt. Okay? The verb faillir is very commonly used, isn't it? So slightly more advanced people, it's slightly sneakier than a way of saying presque. So for example, I fell, je suis tombé. I almost fell, je suis presque tombé. I almost fell, j'ai failli tomber. So I use failli as a verb. Notice it's conjugated with avoir as a way to say almost. How fascinating that must be for ballet. people watching this, but you'll be great friends at the end of this because you're both learning different things. So failli is a step. It's, I mean, for want of other things, it's basically up, feet together, land off and across before something else. You know, failli assembler. There's this jumping up, legs together kind of feel to it before stepping across. I can't think etymologically why that is called a failed step. Is it that you're not going anywhere in the first section? There's this element of a small legs together thing. I honestly can't think technique-wise why that would be seen as a failed step, but it's known as failli or pas failli. Yeah. There's variations thereof, but it's preparatory. It's so largely preparatory. I mean, it can fly and look very nice. Assemblée. But yeah, so as far as you're concerned, failli. Faillite is bankruptcy. J'ai failli faire quelque chose. I almost did something, as we said. Faillir à is the inability to do something. This is not the most common expression. So, j'ai failli faire quelque chose is I almost did something. J'ai failli à faire quelque chose is I didn't commit to and stick to doing what I'd said to do it. I wasn't able to follow that through. Much more commonly, I didn't manage to do it. Je suis pas arrivé à le faire. J'ai pas pu le faire. J'ai pas réussi à le faire. Yeah, but have a little look at failli, all the same people. Yeah, good. En face we've spoken about. So when you're facing is in front, as opposed to this. Face, very busy expression in French. So en face de is opposite. Where's Luke? Oh, he's just opposite. Il est en face. Probably buying something to eat. En face de. Your face can also be your face in French. I mean, I know we all love visage, but you know, you can use it to describe your face. So she's hiding her face behind a fan. I should have made this slightly bigger. Alors, elle cachait sa face derrière un éventail. Look at the monkey's face. That's a rather interesting example. Regarde la face de ce singe. You know, how many sides does a shape have? Alors, combien cube a-t-il de face? The north face, yeah, of a sort of a mountain, a peak, you know, that would be face. Good. You don't know the hidden side of the story, the hidden aspect of the story. Again, figurative. Can I push figurative enough upon the advanced learners? You might go, yeah, we know the word. No, do you know the figurative version? Alors, ouais, tu connais pas encore la face cachée de l'histoire. Good. À la face, to do something à la face is basically openly to the world. En face is opposite. Yeah, à la face. You know, or en face, no de. So to dire les choses en face, I'm going to say the thing right out and open to somebody's, in the open to somebody's face. Good, I'm going to have a wee little cheeky pause again, and then we'll come back with G, but we've actually passed halfway. Hurrah, 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 hurrah. Right, dancers have a stretch. The rest of you have a glass of wine, or whatever the French learning community does. I will speak to you later. Just a little, we'll see you in 10 minutes. Now, do I need a costume change? It's the third act, isn't it? So, you know, Shakespeare tends to be sort of different acts, but ballet kind of, I don't know, we're quite good with the first and the second. Do I need the same costume but with a, you know, sequins on? Like, I don't think I've ever seen a sequin khaki. Oh yeah, I have. My best friend Sam had a sequin khaki sort of hoodie. Random. See you next for the next installment.